Welcome back, Fanfield family! I've got a bonus video for you today, something I've wanted to cover for a while now, and with the Bleach anime returning on October 5th, now feels like the perfect time to cover it. Today, we're going to take a look at my top 7 favorite Shikai in Bleach, the first form of a Shinigami's released weapon. In the next bonus video in a few days, we'll look at my top 7 favorite Bankai. My criteria for this list is not power or utility or who we've seen them overcome, but rather my own personal preferences. If you've got a different opinion, tell me down in the comments. I want to hear what your favorites are. Also, I will only be covering Shikai that are confirmed as Shikai. As much as I love Aizen's Kyoka Suigetsu, it's not 100% confirmed whether his perfect hypnosis is Shikai or Bankai, so I don't feel right putting it on a list like this. First, 3 honorable mentions. I really like these Shikai, but I couldn't justify putting them above any of the 7 I chose for the main list. The first honorable mention is Ikaku Madarame Zanpakuto Hozuki Maru. Hozuki Maru is an interesting and versatile weapon, and it's a great fit for Ikaku, who is, at the time we meet him, the 3rd seat of the 11th Division, the squad focused entirely on physical combat. Hozuki Maru's name roughly translates to Demon Light, and with the release command Grow, it turns into a Kikuchi Yari, a Japanese spear. Ikaku can then use this spear in much the same way that a traditional spear can be used, but when his opponent thinks they have the feel for it, Ikaku can split it into a 3-section staff held together by chains. This gives Ikaku additional range and unpredictability. The second honorable mention is Kisuke Urahara's Benihime. Literally meaning Crimson Princess, Benihime usually takes the form of a cane, sort of like real-world cane swords. With the release command Awaken, it transforms into a slender straight-edged sword. In Shikai, Benihime allows Urahara to create and manipulate red energy in a number of ways. He can shoot blasts of it, form barriers, restrain foes, and more. It's a neat weapon. Finally, the third honorable mention is Byakuya Kuchiki's Senbon Zakura, translated as Thousand Cherry Blossoms. With the release command Scatter, his sword dissolves into thousands of glittering, glowing cherry blossom petals, each under Byakuya's control and each razor sharp, effectively a controllable cloud of razor blades. He can use them for offense, cutting enemies to shreds, or for defense, directing the cloud to intercept attacks. It's cool, but not quite cool enough to beat out At number 7 is Renji Aburai's Zabimaru, which was the first Shikai we ever saw in the series. With the release command Howl, Zabimaru turns from a simple katana into a massive blade that would give Cloud Strife sword envy. This blade isn't just for show either. In addition to its massive size and the teeth sticking out of it at regular intervals, the blade can split, effectively turning it into a whip sword which gives Renji far more range. He can use this whip form to surprise an enemy at range or even bind a foe to allow his allies to deal a finishing blow. I like Zabimaru simply because of the versatility. The way it can switch from a close-range sword to a long-range bladed whip is a neat ability in my eyes. It suits Renji because he's abysmal with Kido, so he doesn't have any other real ranged options, and Zabimaru makes up for that. Kenpachi Zaraki is a fan-favorite character for a reason. He's not just a skilled warrior, he's just so over the top. He's such a goddamn character and I love him for it. All of his fights are awesome. He's the kind of character whose quotes stick in your mind.
I am hilarious and you will quote everything I say.
Kenpachi, for decades, never bothered to listen to his Zanpakuto. He just swung it around like a brute. This was fine, he was strong enough that he could make that work. After he fought Ichigo, however, he started to see the appeal of working with his weapon rather than just using it as a tool. It wasn't until the Quincy invasion of Soul Society, however, that he finally connected with his sword and heard its name. In a fight with one of the Quincy leaders who could create anything simply by imagining it, Kenpachi finally called his sword's name. Gremmy imagined a meteor that would destroy all of Serete, and with the release command Drink, Kenpachi awoke his Shikai and in one powerful cut sliced the meteor in half. When his Shikai is activated, Nozarashi transforms from its eroded Nodachi form into a massive cleaver. Nozarashi, translated as Weather-Beaten One, is a great name for his blade, especially in the sealed state, as you can see that it's chipped and broken. In this cleaver form, it's far more ornate, and big enough that only someone with Kenpachi's monstrous strength could swing it. While the Bleach wiki says that Nozarashi's Shikai simply grants, quote-unquote, tremendous additional attack power, I think it's more than that. I think that it's more along the lines of Kenpachi being able to cut anything if he has even a basic grasp of what it is. Backing this up is his ability to cut space itself apart. That's not something you do just by being strong. That's cutting an absence, a concept.
If there's nothing you can't cut, then I'll kill you with something without form! You will die in the nothingness of outer space! As all the tissues in your body collapse, you'll die a slow and painful death. But if you're lucky, you won't be conscious long enough to...
You didn't forget to harden your body, did ya?
I like Nozarashi for a number of reasons, but mostly it's because it's such a great fit for Kenpachi. He doesn't care about politics or what an enemy's goal is, he just wants to fight strong opponents. An oversized war cleaver is the perfect weapon for a man that just wants to slice his way through everything in his path. The sword of Genryusai Shikakuni Yamamoto, the captain commander of the Gotei 13, Ryujin Jaka, translated as flowing, blade-like flame, is the most powerful fire-type Zanpakuto ever, and one of the most powerful Zanpakuto in all of the Gotei. Yamamoto keeps his blade sealed inside of his cane, but with one of the most awesome release commands ever, Reduce All Creation to Ash, he unveils his weapon and the blade is engulfed in flames. When he calls upon his blade, its heat and power can be felt miles away. Weaker individuals can be overwhelmed simply by the pressure of its presence. When Yamamoto swings the blade, it incinerates any foe in his way.
Watch your enemy burn. Let this act of retribution.
Even Aizen seemed wary of it, preferring not to fight Yamamoto himself, but rather specifically designing a warrior, Wonderweiss, to be the perfect counter for Ryujin Jaka. The weapon has a handful of abilities. It can create impassable walls of flame, incinerate a target to nothing but ash, and Yamamoto can control the flames with incredible precision. I like Ryujin Jaka's raw power. The first time we see it, even Yamamoto's most talented students are terrified. The release command is also one of my favorites, though I always misremember it as burn all things in creation to ash, a fusion of both the English and the Japanese. Kyoraku Shunsui is a really fun character. He's laid back, a little lazy at times, and doesn't like to fight unless it's necessary. He understands his own limits and can very quickly sum up an enemy to determine how he should engage them. He's one of only a very few Shinigami that have 2 Zanpakuto. Most Shinigami only have 1, and most of the Shinigami that have 2 are created from 1. Like Jushiro Ukitaki's Zanpakuto, it's 1 sword when sealed but splits into 2 upon release. His swords are known as Katen Kyokotsu. Katen is the larger blade and Kyokotsu is the smaller. Together, they mean Bones of Heavenly Blooming Madness. Katen Kyokotsu's release command is also different. Most release commands are a single word or a phrase, but this is more like a poem. The flowery winds become disturbed, the god of flowers sings. The heavenly winds become disturbed, the devil of heaven sneers. Now, with that kind of build-up, you're probably expecting something really out there and cool. And you're right. The best way to describe Katen Kyokotsu's ability is that it plays children's games. Now, that doesn't sound too powerful, right? Well, it's not just playing children's games, it's forcing the rules of those games onto reality.
Win and you get to live. Lose and you end up dead. It's just as simple as that. You see, Katen Kyokotsu is quite mischievous. She has the power to turn children's games into reality. And the worst part of the whole thing is, she decides on the rules, and everyone who enters the domain of her spirit energy is forced to abide by those rules.
There are 6 games we know about, but it's possible that there are more that we just haven't seen. Bushogama emulates games played with spinning tops. Shunsui spins with both blades outstretched, launching a swirling whirlwind towards his enemy. If this whirlwind hits, it traps the target inside, injures them, and can disorient them. It's powerful enough to block and disperse powerful hollow attacks like Coyote Stark's Sero.
Ushogama! Don't bother.
Taka Oni is simply defined as whoever is higher up wins. What this basically boils down to is that attacks from above possess far more power. To use a hypothetical example, Espada No. 5, Neutra Gilga, is known for having the most powerful defenses of any of the Espada. If he had fought Shunsui, Katen Kyokotsu would have simply bounced off, but if Taka Oni was in play and Shunsui attacked from above, he would have easily sliced Neutra in half. Kage Oni establishes the rule of whoever gets their shadow stepped on loses. It allows the players to manipulate shadows. We've seen Shunsui hide in shadows, and any attack on his or his foe's shadow inflicts damage on them as well. With Ira Oni, Shunsui calls out a color. He and his foe can only attack that color on their foe's body, and anywhere else it won't cut. The less of a color on a person's body when they call a color, the weaker the attack, and the more of that color on them, the more powerful the attack. Shunsui can effectively game this like he did against Stark. By calling out a color that isn't showing much on his body, he can prevent damage to himself until he sees an opening and can call out a color that will give him a massive advantage.
You have to say the color you want to cut, but you won't be able to cut any other color except the one you announce. In Iro Oni, you can very easily take damage from the color you announce. The way it works is, the more risky the color is to you, the more damage you're able to deal to your opponent. As it turns out, white is the color that would cause the most damage to both of us. Black.
Doruma-san ga Koronda is effectively the children's game Red Light, Green Light. One of the players is marked as it, and the other attacks from out of sight to take them by surprise, but if the player that is it sees the other player, that player loses and dies. Finally, Kage-okuri allows the players to project shadow after images. In Shikai, Katen Kyokotsu takes the form of a pair of ornate dao, with one slightly longer than the other. I love this one because of how much thought clearly went into designing the way these things function. The idea of weaponizing children's games is really unique. Sakanade, translated as Counterstroke, is the weapon of Shinji Hirako, the de facto leader of the Visored, a group of Shinigami that Aizen experimented on, granting them hollow-like abilities, including hollow masks that amplify their power. With the release command Collapse, the blade transforms from a normal katana to a straight-edged blade with holes in it and a large ring on the pommel. When activated, the blade releases a pink mist, and Shinji spreads this mist across the battlefield by spinning Sakanade around his wrist by the ring. Any who inhale this mist are affected by his Sakasama Noai.
Didn't you tell me before that it takes over a person's senses?
What are you talking about? The change is already in effect. Do you smell something good? It's too late to hold your breath. Welcome, Sosuke, to the inverted world.
Sakasama Noai inverts senses. Up becomes down, left becomes right, and so on. If that's all it did, it would still be pretty powerful, making attacking and defending difficult, but doable. No, it does far more than that. It alters everything. Eyesight is backwards, the direction of incoming attacks is reversed, injury locations are flipped. Shinji can even choose to invert only specific aspects so he can throw off foes that know what his ability does. Further, Shinji can specifically target the effects to specific enemies, so he can spread his mist across the battlefield and only afflict foes while leaving allies untouched. This discretion is something not shared by his Bankai, which we may or may not discuss in the next bonus video.
It completely reverses your opponent's sense of direction and acts like a puzzle game, changing which way you move.
Everything is reversed. Up is down, and left is right.
Up and down, left and right, and front and back are all reversed. The way you turned and where you just attacked from are also reversed. But once I employ Sakanade, it becomes almost impossible to fight based on sight. So you're left with reacting reflexively to my attacks, but you have to think twice before every move. Even with your fast reaction time, how will you counteract your reflexes?
The more conditioned you are, the greater chance you'll fail!
I really like this one because it's not something that you can really easily fight against, especially if you're a skilled fighter. Your muscle memory will actually work against you. Now, those of you who know me are probably scratching your heads. You guys know that I love sui-feng, so why is her Shikai only at number 2? Well, we'll discuss what surpasses her ability in a bit. Suzume Bachi, literally translated as Hornet, is sui-feng Shikai. With the release command Sting All Enemies to Death, it transforms from a wakizashi to a gold and black bracer with a prominent golden talon over sui-feng's middle finger.
Well then. Sting all enemies to death. Suzume Bachi. Suzume Bachi.
When sui-feng strikes a foe with this talon, the stinger if you'll allow me the metaphor, a butterfly-shaped mark appears spreading out from the point of impact. This mark, called a homunca, remains as long as sui-feng wishes, and if she can land a second strike anywhere on that mark, the target instantly dies in a burst of spiritual energy. This ability, Nigeki Kesatsu, is perfect for sui-feng. She's an assassin, she focuses on speed and stealth, and the ability to execute a target with 2 simple strikes, no need for excessive force, is exactly what she needs. I love Suzume Bachi because it's both a really cool design, leaning into that hornet theme with the colors and stinger, but also because it's a bit of a deviation from a semi-common anime stereotype. The idea of, this attack will instantly kill you no matter what, bwahaha, is kind of played out, so requiring a second hit adds a lot of extra flavor to the ability. And at number 1, we have the Zanpakuto of the Lieutenant of the 3rd Division, Izuru Kira. Now, you're probably asking, how the hell is a Fallout Boy reject-looking Shinigami Zanpakuto at the number 1 spot? Well, dear viewer, let me enlighten you. Kira's Zanpakuto is called Wabisuke. Literally translated as the Wretched One, I actually prefer the official English name, the Penitent One. With the release command of Raise Your Head, Wabisuke shifts into a bizarre shape not unlike a fishhook with 2 90-degree angles. The blade is on the inside of this hook shape, which, at a casual glance, makes no sense, right? It's actually for a pretty dark reason. You see, Wabisuke isn't meant for slashing.
Raise your head. Wabisuke!
Wabisuke has the ability to double the weight of anything it strikes, living or not. What's more, this effect is cumulative and multiplicative. One cut doubles the weight, a second quadruples it, a third octuples it, and so on. So, what does that mean? It means that your only way to fight Wabisuke is to not fight. You need to run, or you need to kill Kira before he can land a single hit. You can't block, you can't just tank a hit. If you block his strike, your sword doubles in weight. Let's say you start with a 2-pound sword. You block his first attack, your sword now weighs 4 pounds. You attack and he parries, now your sword weighs 8 pounds. With just a few hits, your sword is too heavy to swing. Then, he cuts you a few times and you're too heavy to move. Weighed down by your own body like this, your head is bowed as though in penitence, and Kira now reveals why his blade is shaped the way it is. He steps up behind you, places the hook of Wabisuke under your throat, and pulls up, decapitating you like a reverse guillotine.
I believe you asked what exactly this weird-looking sword of mine could cut. Isn't that right?
I love Wabisuke because it's something that there's really no defense against, excluding really niche abilities. Rangiku Matsumoto's Shikai allows her to turn her blade to ash and shred foes with it, and Byakuya's Senbonzakura could theoretically counter it in the same way. Other than that, you just have to prevent him from swinging the blade at all. It's also a great fit for Kira. His whole division's theme is the dread and despair of battle, the idea that war should be avoided whenever possible, that peace is a far better path. By having a weapon that forces the foe to bow their head with regret, it drives the point home. War is not a desirable outcome and will always result in pain.
This is a scale model of war. Every war ever fought right there in front of you. Because it's always the same. When you fire that first shot, no matter how right you feel, you have no idea who's going to die. You don't know whose children are going to scream and burn. How many hearts will be broken? How many lives shattered? How much blood will spill until everybody does what they were always going to have to do from the very beginning? Sit down and talk!
And that's my top 7 favorite Shikai in all of Bleach. Do you agree with my list? Is your list drastically different? I want to hear about it. In a few days, we'll take a look at my top 7 favorite Bankai as another bonus video. Thank you so much for watching. If you like the kind of content you just watched, please consider liking, commenting, and subscribing. I do all kinds of stuff on the channel, from Star Wars to Bleach to James Bond, DC, Marvel, and more, and there's a new video every single Friday. If you want to see my video on sui-feng and why she's so great, click here. Or click here to check out my first ever What If story. Again, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.